VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. This is the May 2nd edition. I'm here with Vikings Central, who indeed has a face and a first name. We learned that 2 weeks ago. It's Brett. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. I'm just happy it's not windy today. I know you're in Sioux Falls. The wind's been blowing like crazy the last couple days. Beautiful day today, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, we in these parts, I'm guessing most of our viewers are somewhere in the Midwest. Not all of you.
Yeah,
But yeah, it seems like this is like not a new tradition, but an established tradition that
right.
we'll be like, yeah, it's windy, and then every year at this time, it's windy as hell for a couple weeks, and then sometimes it just doesn't stop. All right,
No,
enough
exactly.
enough with the weather pleasantries from the both of us. This is Vikings football. This is a Vikings football show. I'm going to take a wild guess that you enjoyed the draft, all 3 days of it, chiefly because you got your quarterback that you spoke of on this show 2 weeks ago. We'll get to that shortly.
Yeah.
But on the whole, sir, what did you like or love about this Vikings NFL draft?
Well, I was actually a really big fan of the draft overall. I thought Quasey did a good job. One of the things I really liked about this draft is Quasey and Kevin in that front office. They went for premier positions. You know what I mean? So they went wide receiver in round one, and then they go, two defensive backs back to back in the third round and in the fourth round. And then you go get your defensive tackle, and then you get that developmental quarterback, and then you pick up a running back in the seventh round. And I thought they got pretty good value as well. I know Jordan Addison in the first round. That's probably about where the consensus kind of had him going in the 20s there. But with the fit in this offense, across from Justin Jefferson, I feel like they probably had him like top 10, top 15 on their board just for the fit in Kevin O'Connell's scheme. So I thought they got really good value there as well. And then in the seventh round, the running back from UAB, he was about a fourth round pick, I thought, a mid round pick, and they got him in the seventh. And then Kwesi said in his press conference as well, like, we have a starter grade on this dude. Um, so yeah, I thought that was really good value as well there in the seventh with the running back. And then the defense players, I think they're going to transition into Brian Flores' scheme really well. I know people kind of say Mekhi Blackman was maybe a little bit of a reach,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's feisty. He's a dog on the outside. He has that versatility to play on the inside and the slot, and then on the boundary as well. So I think that's why he's going to fit well in Brian Flores' defense. And then we added some meat as well with is it Jacqueline or
Yeah, I
something
think
like
they just call
that?
him Jay. We get these
Jay Roy.
we get
Yeah, there
these
you go.
players with like two gender names from LSU, these defensive linemen, Danielle
Yep.
Hunter, and then Jacqueline Roy. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll work on the first name pronunciation. The one thing about McBride is the goofy thing is when I was a kid or even a teenager, he could have been like a second rounder or third rounder.
Yeah.
That's how running backs were valued. And then on the trade back
Yeah.
part that I found interesting is we knew that Quasi said he took the shot clock down to get Addison. We were all a lot of us thinking he was going to trade back. And I think what happened there is
Right.
you have to, even though you are enamored with the pick, if you're on the phone and somebody like the Chiefs says, all right, we'll give you a first and then next year's first or our second, you have to listen to that juicy type of an offer. It doesn't mean that they were
Right.
wishy-washy about, do we want Addison? We don't know. You had to say, like,
Right.
if listen to what the other teams have to say. On
Yeah.
the Jay Ward pick, I think that one will be fascinating because he's labeled as a safety, but
Sure.
if you pull back the curtain, like he played slot cornerback for the most part, majority of
Yep.
snaps at Alabama. So do you foresee one of these defenders starting or having a huge defensive role this year?
Sure. Yeah. I think Roy in the middle, I think he's going to be at minimum a rotational piece along the defensive line, in my opinion. Just because he's a big, beefy dude, I think can get after the passer too. So I think he's going to be a rotational piece in this defense. And then Mekhi Blackman, I think they really like him. He's already 24 years old, so he's got a ton of experience playing corner. I think he's going to be able to come in and play as well. And then the guy that you mentioned, Jay Ward, um, he's a little raw yet. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like is he kind of a tweener, or is he fit at one specific spot, or is he versatile? It's going to be something Brian Flores is going to kind of have to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he played a majority of the snaps in the slot, but he also played safety, free safety, played on the boundary a little bit as well. So they just got to kind of figure out where he's best at. But if anything, with Jay Ward, he's going to be a special teams ace, in my opinion. He's going to be really good as a gunner or wherever position they have him in special teams, because he's a really good athlete. So I think they're all going to contribute in some way. But I think the most contribution I think is going to be probably from Mekhi Blackman, in my opinion.
Excellent. And then an important note on Jay Ward, or as we talked about in the drafts lead up, if the Vikings had drafted Brian Branch with the first pick, or I guess evidently second round, or Jay Ward, Harrison Smith isn't long for this NFL world. We're probably 1 or 2 years max. So if in theory it would have been Brian Branch, or now Ward, who's got a diet Branch, it's not like, what are you doing? Get another safety. It's, fellas, we're preparing for life after Harrison Smith because the guy's 34. And sadly, he won't be playing for too much longer. All right. So I'm going to guess constructive criticism. If you got to put like your manager hat on, what was something that you wish the Vikings had done differently or will do differently in the future in the draft?
For the draft this year, obviously he didn't have a lot of ammo to work with. He only had 5 picks coming into the draft. And I thought he maneuvered pretty well. Like you were talking about earlier, Dustin, like he probably had calls to move back, but they just saw that Addison pick, too much value there, really good fit in the system. And he thought that maybe Kansas City really liked Jordan Addison. So if they were going to jump up and grab him, they probably are going to. So they didn't want to miss out on the value with that Addison pick. But there was a couple of guys that they kind of didn't select where I wanted them to select. So like instead of Mekhi Blackman, I like Blackman. And we talked on the last episode with you here. I really like Clark Phillips as well from Utah.
I was waiting on him for you.
Yep. So I was kind of really rooting for him, I think at 102 there. But I think Flores likes more versatility. If they selected Phillips, he was just going to play in the slot or in the nickel. He wasn't going to have any opportunity to be on the outside, where I think Blackman can kind of do both. So I understand the pick there. And then maybe in the 5th round, I would have liked them to go for like a Evan Hull out of Northwestern, because he's just a tremendous receiving running back. And with our running backs right now, like none of them are known for catching the ball. You got Ty Chandler. I mean, he didn't really catch many passes at UNC. Alexander Madison, he can catch the football, but he's more of that power back. And then Dwayne McBride's kind of the same way. So I thought maybe getting a receiving threat out of the backfield could have been a little bit more of a priority, but they go get Roy and Jaron Hall in the 5th, and that's probably kind of where they were going to be with Evan Hall. So I understand those selections. And then the other thing, which isn't really his fault, because he traded away the 2nd rounder for TJ Hawkinson. I'm super happy with that, obviously. But there was a lot of good players left on the 2nd round. So if there was any way that they had that 2nd round pick, they could have got a guy like Brian Branch, because he did fall into the mid 40s, and Detroit ended up getting him. But they kind of, like we're talking about, they kind of went with Jay Ward route instead of the Brian Branch route, which he's not as good as Brian Branch right now. But if they would have had a little bit more flexibility to move around in the 2nd round, that would have been really, really good. But obviously that's not Kwesi's fault. He made that trade for Hawkinson. So, I credit him for that more than anything.
Yeah, it sucked for about 21 hours knowing that you could go get Joey Porter, but you knew the Vikings couldn't because of the small piggy bank and draft capital. And yet we might look back and think, God, could have got Porter at 23, depending on how good he is. He's got a long way to go to prove that. But yeah, I think a lot in our orbits, it was either stay put and get Addison or Joey Porter. And there was a universe for somewhat of a reasonable price. You probably could have got both. All right, I have a question for you. Talk about Clark Phillips. 2 weeks ago, you talked about Jaron Hall. Do you have friends or ties to Utah?
A little bit. So I got some relatives over there, and I went to college up in the Twin Cities for 2 years, and actually had it was an athlete that transferred over to BYU.
Okay.
And I visited over there once or twice. So a little bit of connections and stuff like that. But yeah, I've always been a fan of Jaron Hall. I've heard really good things about him. The Clark Phillips was just kind of preference for the player. I thought he was really a really good corner for Utah. But yeah, that is kind of funny where
I got to thinking, all right, is this grandpa from Utah or something?
Yeah,
all right.
Here's
my segue. And this is probably the most important question of our show today. And this is because you're a self-professed Jaron Hall guy. At least you were 2 weeks ago. I'm guessing you still are. Tell me why the men and women watching this program should be more excited about Jaron Hall at this very moment than Kellen Mond 2 years ago?
Yeah, just starting out right away, not even really talking about the players. I think the situation is 100 times better
Mm-hmm.
that Jaren Hall's coming into.
Yeah, now that
Yeah,
it just clicked in my head what you're talking about.
yeah. So coming into an offense with Kevin O'Connell, an offensive-minded head coach instead of the grouchy Mike Zimmer who really likes to focus on defense and everything like that. But going back to the player itself, Jaren Hall played in a pro style system. Like
Mm-hmm.
he was asked to play. I know a lot of people say this. He was asked to play on hard mode all the time. All the circumstances weren't perfect for him. Whereas, Kellen Mond, they weren't perfect for him either. But he was kind of in more of a system where things were laid out perfectly for him, made easier reads and everything like that. And Kellen Mond was never even under center most of the time. And we saw that in training camp.
Mm-hmm.
Where he was fumbling snaps. And, I'm sure Mike Zimmer's patience was just gone from that moment where the dude can't even handle a snap. But yeah, Kellen Mond, even when you look at the release, Jaren Hall has one of the best mechanics in this entire draft. Like he's got a tight release. He has a lot of zip on the football. Where Kellen Mond, his release wasn't, perfect. It was a little awkward and everything like that. They're both mobile quarterbacks. Jaren Hall is a really tough guy, and Kellen Mond is too. But just coming into the better situation, Jaren Hall has already been in this pro style system where I think it's going to translate really well to Kevin O'Connell's scheme. So I think he's just set up for success more than Kellen Mond was. And if it wasn't for the medical history that Jaren Hall had, he's had concussions, he had a hip injury, he'd probably been like a third round pick, to be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
because the dude's, in my opinion, he's tailor made for this offense. And I think he's going to be a really good pro. Yeah.
I challenge our viewers today to go watch his little 7-minute interview on YouTube, like Vikings YouTube, because I know it's going to sound like a homer take, but the guy really sounds like he knows how to lead men, and
Yeah,
he
for
sounds
sure.
mature, and that's probably because he's 25, where Mond was 21 when he came in. So yeah, there's a lot of growing up there that happens in those
Right.
4 years. But I didn't know, so I'd watched the film. I'd never taken the time to go see, how he looks, like his face and how he talks, like evidently Quasi did.
Yeah.
And I was blown away and like, all right, this dude, he seems like a leader. And then when you watch him on the tape, he really does feel like a Kyler Murray that nobody cares about. Like
Right.
flat out. Like he doesn't have quite that arm strength, nor is he quite that fast, but he's got the diet version of both. And so if you close your eyes and watch the highlights, it feels like you're watching a junior version of Kyler Murray. Is there a better comp
Yeah.
than Kyler in your opinion?
Obviously, this would be like best case scenario.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, Russell Wilson.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
I
he
remember
was
the ESPN article on that too.
yeah, he was kind of a mid round pick coming out of Wisconsin. I think he was like a third round pick. But like I said before, Jaren probably would have been a third round pick if he was healthy and his medicals kind of cleared out. But they're kind of the same in size. Jaren Hall 6 foot, 210 pounds or so. Just both really well put together guys. Not even talking about football. They're mature, just really good leaders. But their game does really kind of resemble each other. To be honest, they both throw really pretty deep balls. They can escape the pocket. Their escapability is really really good. I think Russell Wilson was probably a better on the run thrower, more accurate. That's something Jaren Hall can really kind of improve on, is throwing on the run on those rollouts or escaping the pocket and keeping his eyes down the field. But I really like that Russell Wilson comp. But right now, I'd probably say like maybe like a Gardner Minshew a little bit,
Okay.
where he's kind of got some dazzle to his game a little bit. And he can make a lot of throws. It's just that consistency that he has to really get down.
Okay. Yeah. What we're alluding to for the folks who aren't 100% immersed in this, like you and I, is about 2 or 3 weeks ago, ESPN behind their paywall published an article that was kind of puppeted by executives and scouts. And they made comps for every quarterback in this draft class except for like Sean Clifford. And the only one in the mid to late rounds that had a good comp was Jaren Hall, and that was Russell Wilson. The rest were, Blaine Gabbert types. So I think that was one of Will
Yeah.
Levis's that you're like, well, wait a second here. So yeah, evidently we got the developmental Russell Wilson. We shall see. All right, the next
Yeah.
exercise, we got 2 more questions. This one is actually kind of fun. I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to build the Vikings starting Defense, we'll do 11 dudes. I might get your brain for the third cornerback, depending on the formation. So not the edge rushers, but the 3 defensive linemen last year. That was Tomlinson, Bullard, and Harrison Phillips. Give me those 3, I guess, defensive tackles, for lack of a better term, for the September Vikings.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think there's gonna be like a lot of rotation along the defensive line.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys are gonna be playing a lot of snaps, which I think is a good thing. Those guys don't get wore out or anything like that. So there's gonna be a lot of rotation. But I do see Dean Lowry, Harrison Phillips, and then what kind of a surprise, I think Patrick Jones is going to have a really good offseason, a really good camp. It's his 3rd year, and I think he's going to be able to come in and make a difference along that defensive line. And we saw flashes last year.
Oh, God, he was good at times.
Yeah, he played really, really well, could get after the quarterback. So I think he's going to kind of be a surprising guy to watch in camp. But obviously, Jonathan Bullard's going to rotate in. I think Jay Roy is what we call him, is going to rotate in as a rookie. And then you got Kyrus Tonga, you got James Lynch. So you got guys that are good depth pieces that I think are going to come in and make a difference as well. But I see Dean Lowry, the free agent signing from Green Bay, making a difference, Harrison Phillips, and then Patrick Jones. But, it's probably going to be really fluid along that defensive line.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying is, although it matters, it doesn't really matter who the 3 names are on the billboard at defensive tackle, because they'll be not interchangeable, but for pass rushing situations, it sounds like a Floresian thing. All right. On the edges, this one's important. I'm going to guess you have Danielle Hunter, but maybe you don't. What do you got on the edges?
Yeah, I still think Za'Darius is gone eventually. It's just depending on how they clean up the mess that he kind of created on social media and everything like that. I just see a hard time him coming back at this point. So I see Danielle Hunter. I think he's going to be here. I think they're going to get a extension going for Danielle Hunter at some point here this offseason. And then Marcus Davenport, Mr. Number 0 now. Hopefully we save jokes. Hopefully he has like 10 sacks. He doesn't end up with half a sack or 0 sacks again. But I think Marcus Davenport and Danielle Hunter are going to be on the edges, and I think they're going to be a really good tandem. And I can even see them getting moved into the inside at times as well. And then you kind of have DJ Wanham on the edge that can come in and make a difference. So yeah, I think Danielle Hunter and Marcus Davenport, they're going to be a really good duo in 2023 here.
On accident, I figured out why Marcus Davenport is wearing number 0. I went to write about that it'll be the first Viking to ever wear that number. And by accident, I found in an NFL.com article last month, he did an interview with Kevin Patra, and he said he's starting over at 0, like in his career, because he had 0.5 sacks, and he's personally not happy about that. And in the quote, before he picked the number, he said, "So I'm starting at 0 with the Vikings," and it clicked. And I was like, "All right, it's symbolic." So it can only go up, because he was personally, he was personally. I'm just connecting the dots between that quote and him picking 0. I think he was a little ashamed by the 0.5 sacks, which for an edge rusher is not what you want. Even though he did fine with the pressures, you got to at least get the quarterback sometime. All right, off-ball linebackers. Assuming there's 2 at least on the depth chart. Who are those men?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk about Brian Asamoah, and I do think he's going to get every opportunity to start, and I think he will. The other linebacker is kind of intriguing. Jordan Hicks got restructured and everything like that. You could tell that he was didn't have a really good year last year. But I think they like his veteran leadership in the room there. And then they signed Troy Reeder and I think he was on the Rams, so that connection with Kevin O'Connell. But I'm gonna stick with Jordan Hicks for now. But I won't be surprised if even a guy like Ivan Pace Jr. I know he was undrafted, but that dude can play football and he can get after the passer from the linebacker position. And his coverage skills are okay, but I think Brian Flores is really going to fall in love with him, because they love that tenacity and that energy, kind of that sideline to sideline guy. And I think him and Brian Asamoah would be a lot of fun to watch, and I think they'd get after it.
Yeah, especially in a modern offense. Now, if we were kicking it as younger men doing a show in 2010 and we're looking at Asamoah and Ivan Pace as our linebackers, we'd be like, what on earth are we doing? These guys are dwarfs. But that's not how it works anymore. You can be speedy and undersized. Evidently, you can still fall out of a draft because of it. But yeah, Ivan Pace production was there at Cincinnati. All right, give me the 2 starting cornerbacks, and then who you think will get most of the slot snaps.
Yeah, so this is going to be interesting. Byron Murphy Jr. is for sure big free agent signing. He's going to be on the outside. He's going to play some slot too, another versatile guy. But the other side is going to be very interesting, very very interesting. Depending on how the health is, I know he struggled with concussions last year. I'm going to say Caleb Evans. I think he kind of just fits that mold as an outside corner, and he did show flashes last year. Another full off season. I think it's going to do wonders for him as long as he can stay healthy. I think he's a really good outside corner in this league, and they're going to give him the opportunity to be that outside guy, in my opinion.
And that will be nerve-wracking for Andrew Booth personally. Thankfully, he doesn't have a first-round draft name attached to him, because that would be brutal for Kwesi's reputation. Is a second-rounder, so in theory, if he doesn't start or doesn't turn out to much, still will suck, but won't be the end of the world. But for his sake, based on what we thought about him last year at this time or leading up to the draft, Booth has got to do something. But Evans was the guy that put butts in seats last year, or at least for a month or so. And then so Murphy, Evans, and then the slot will mostly fall to who? This one's super intriguing.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of going to be another one where the situation's kind of fluid, kind of like the defensive line, because there is so many players that are going to be able to come in and play. You got Andrew Booth Jr., you got Mekhi Blackman, the rookie, and then you even got like Jay Ward from LSU that can play in that position as well. And then Jawan Williams, free agent signing, I think was pretty good in New England until he started battling injuries. So I won't count him out either. But I could see Mekhi Blackman getting a lot of those snaps. I won't say right away, maybe, but I still think they're going to give a chance to Andrew Booth Jr. as well. And I don't know how confident I would be with him in the slot, but I think they're going to try to find a way to get him playing time. But I'm going to go Mekhi Blackman. I'm going to be kind of controversial. Andrew Booth Jr. is kind of the odd man guy out. He's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And then once he stays healthy, he's gonna build that trust with the Vikings fan base, Vikings coaching staff, and I think he'll get the opportunity to play. But health aside, I think Mekhi Blackman's going to be a really good player in the slot.
And what disclaimer I would give to everybody is, now that they have Blackman from the third round and then Ward, who's a crossover, there's this temptation to think or say, well, maybe they'll go out and get Marcus Peters, or maybe they'll go out and get Rocky Sin, which will be fine and dandy. But then I will say to you, not you personally, but everybody, who are you going to cut then? Because we don't have, besides Byron Murphy, you don't have any cornerback moguls who are guaranteed to be good. We have a bunch of guys we think will be good. But if they go sign a free agent, it wouldn't be utterly surprising, but then there's an odd man out, whether that is, it's pretty much Jawan Williams. He would just have to be a nothing burger, which would check out. But we had this anxiety a month ago. We don't have any cornerbacks and nobody cares, to all of a sudden now we got a bunch. So I don't know who else they're going to sign. It's kind of a strange spot to live in. The two safeties are those Hitman and Scene.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with things. Harrison Smith and Lewis Seen. As long as he comes in healthy, it sounds like he is on schedule. His recovery is going great. I can't wait to watch Lewis Seen.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be really good. And another guy that flies around on defense. And a guy that I could see maybe being a surprise cut could be Cameron Bynum. Depending on Lewis Seen's health again. If he's healthy and he's playing alongside Harrison Smith, you got Josh Metellus, who's really good on special teams. Cameron Bynum, I don't think that super special on special teams. So I think they keep a spot for Josh Metellus, and then you got Jay Ward again, who has safety experience, and that he was a draft pick this year. So that could be a surprise cut, Cameron Bynum. But I got Harrison Smith and Lewis Seen as the two starting safeties.
Another bit of evidence that would enhance your theory on Bynum, if we get there, is it would be a further obituary for the 2021 draft class. Systemically, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said sayonara to almost all of those guys, and it might have just taken an extra year for Bynum because of the I guess the shakiness they had on scene out of the gate. All right, my last question to you, outside of Patrick Jones, because you've already promoted that one. So there's always one guy, at least one guy, hopefully there's 12, but there's always one guy that sneaks up in the summer and you're like, holy shit, this guy's going to be good. 2 years ago, it was KJ Osborne. He grabbed the WR3 job by the throat when we absolutely finally needed to find a damn WR3. Who's it going to be this year? Who is the guy that turns heads this summer that's like, my goodness, this guy's either going to start or beyond the shadow of a doubt make the roster?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because this is a position that there's already a bunch of studs at, but it's wide receiver again. I
Mm-hmm.
could see Jalen Naylor having a really good camp.
Okay.
They're pretty high on Jalen Naylor out of Michigan State, a guy that can just take the tops off of defenses. And I know Jordan Addison can do that, but he's not like a super burner type of guy. He's a guy that loves to route run, like a pristine route runner that controls the middle of the field, which is going to open up the downfield passes. And I see Jalen Naylor maybe making a difference as at least a deep threat, and I think he's going to have a really good camp. I also had a conversation with Thayer Thomas. He's an undrafted free agent out of NC State.
Mm-hmm.
He's another wide receiver. That dude can run routes. He's only about 6 foot, but he kind of reminds me of like a Wes Welker type. And obviously, I'm not comparing him to Wes Welker, but he's a littler guy that can just destroy DBs. And if a linebacker's on him, he can move the chain. So I think that's going to be another fun guy to watch in training camp in this off season. So a couple wide receivers. And I'm trying to think of defense as well.
We kind of went through the whole defense. That was the
yeah,
we buried the
exactly.
lead.
So I'll stick with my Patrick Jones love. So
No, that's fair. I remember, I think it was the Miami game last year. Patrick Jones had a sack or two, and I was there, and I was excited tweeting Patrick Jones because he looked like the real deal. On Jalen Naylor, that's going to be one of the more fascinating parts of this summer, and it's because you know how erroneously folks will savage Kirk Cousins for being a garbage time savant. Well, last year, there's nothing he could do about it, but Jalen Naylor was a garbage time wide receiver, and he looked great when Packers game didn't matter. The Bears game, for the most part, didn't matter. And so you have to wonder, will that translate into when the real guys are on the field? And I think it will. And he'll just have to, he's going to have kind of the problem that I worried about for Irv Smith last year is targets. He's going to have to, all of these guys that are guaranteed to get theirs, and Jefferson, Hawkinson, probably Addison now, and then where's the ball going to get thrown? So if there's no injuries, then the target load is a little skimpy. But yeah, I like the Naylor pick because he was on one of my shows about a year ago, and he said the right things, and then he backed it up with the speed, and he seemed like a playmaker given the situation, and he can't help when he's tossed in the game. All right, sir. We've made the pact to talk every other Tuesday. So I'm going to guess by the next time we talk, we're really heating up into extension season because we have Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Danielle Hunter, all of those guys theoretically should be paid before the start of the season. Who do you think is the first off the board?
Justin Jefferson would make the most sense because Kwesi's talked about it and that it's going to get done.
Champagne problems is what he called
It's going to get done. Yeah. I think TJ is going to get done as well. TJ Hawkinson. But I would have to bet on JJ getting his extension first, but they're going to get TJ done as well. The Danielle Hunter one's going to be an interesting one. I hope they can get something done, but that's going to be probably the most intriguing one to watch.
I swear to God, every year for at least 4 straight off seasons, we've got the Danielle Hunter contract saga. And I understand it. They didn't want to give him a fat sack of cash when he was coming back from neck injury. And then he had to prove it this year. He did. He played all 17 games. He switched to a brand new scheme. But yeah, every year I look up and I'm like, oh, the draft's over. Let's talk about Danielle Hunter's contract.
Yeah.
All right, Brett, we'll be back in 2 weeks, sir. I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate your time, man.
See you next time. Skol, baby.
Yep.